Okay, good morning and welcome to the May 26, 2026 Board of Police Commissioners meeting. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. The City of Regina owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory, as well as settlers from around the world who continue to be welcomed here and call Regina home. First, can I have a motion to approve the public agenda? Councillor Radens, thank you. I'll call the question. Any opposed? And carried. Next, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting held on April 28th, 2026? Thank you. Commissioner Brooks. Any errors or omissions? Okay, I'll call the question. Any opposed? And carried. Okay, our first item on the agenda is PO 26-16, open letter and petition, RPS privacy abuses, and we'll start with our delegations. So I'd like to call upon delegation Florence Stratton, please. Morning, Florence. If you just try and push the green button on the button, it should turn green. There should be one button on the middle there. Yeah, and then just move the mic down towards you there, whatever's comfortable. Okay, there you are. So I'll get you to introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing today, if any, the city or town you reside in. You'll have 5 minutes to address the board, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions we have. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Florence Stratton. I'm representing myself, but I think also all citizens who are concerned with justice. I am here today to ask Regina Board of Police Commissioners to stand up for justice for women victimized by Regina Police. When I was growing up in Regina in the 1940s and 50s, I was told repeatedly by both my mother and my teachers, "The policeman is your friend." Was it true then? I had no reason to doubt it. Perhaps that was because I grew up with white middle-class privilege. Is it true now? The cases of Robert Semenchuk and Clinton Duquette cast a huge cloud of doubt in the matter. What these cases show is the targeted victimization of women by members of Regina Police Service, along with wholly inadequate disciplinary measures for the harms caused. Indeed, it looks like the Regina Police Service does not take gender-based violence seriously. It is also becoming clear that these are not merely cases of a few bad apples. Rather, sexism and misogyny are ingrained in the Regina Police Service. To add to this grim picture, many such cases involve Indigenous women, including the victim of former Chief of Police Farouk Sheikh. These are indications that anti-Indigenous racism is also ingrained in the Regina Police Service, as well as evidence of ongoing Canadian settler colonial policies and practices. As I said at the beginning, I am here to ask the Regina Board of Police Commissioners to stand up for justice for women victimized by Regina Police. What might this justice look like? It would certainly include appropriate penalties for RPS members who are abusers of women. It would also include the Regina Police Service investigating its policies and practices for ingrained sexism and anti-Indigenous racism. Please, Regina Board of Police Commissioners, stand up for justice. In so doing, you will help restore community trust in the Regina Police Service. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Do any members have questions for our delegation? Okay, I see no questions. Thanks for your presentation, Florence. You can return to the gallery. Okay, next I'd like to call upon Delegation Trish Elliott. Okay, I think the mic is still on for you there, so you can adjust as needed. And then once you're settled, I'll get you to introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing today, if any, what city or town you reside in. You'll have 5 minutes to address the board, after which you can respond to any questions members may have. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
Sure, and thanks for delaying the meeting a bit for us. It was important. My name is Trish Elliott. I'm a co-author of the open letter and a signer of the petition. I'm not part of a formal organization. The letter came about just by women talking among themselves. And it's signed by everyone from university professors to restaurant servers. We watched these cases unfold and agreed it shouldn't be so difficult for women to report police wrongdoing and gain even a small semblance of justice. So we reached out to some of the victims who helped guide the solutions contained in our letter and my remarks today. And I will say I'm not usually nervous speaking in public, but this time I confess I am, because in speaking with victims, I'm very aware of what some members of the Regina Police can and will do against women who challenge them. And it's frightening for me, and I can't imagine how frightening it is for the victims. I'm here because the Board of Police Commissioners bylaw, under that bylaw, this board is solely responsible for the provision of policing services within the city of Regina and has authority to make rules and regulations for governing the police service. The board's silence on the Duquette case is alarming for this reason. Why hasn't there been a response by the elected members, especially to inquiries from the public? The board must be seen to be taking these concerns seriously and making it clear to the public they've implemented recommendations advanced by the Privacy Commissioner. I appreciate the chief's remarks on zero tolerance, but we don't know what that looks like in detail, and civilians have not been consulted on this very serious civilian oversight issue. As citizens, we demand serious consequences for unlawful abuse of information that police hold on civilians. We note that charges against Clinton Duquette under LA FOIP are not criminal charges. Though we support the laying of any charges, we also believe RPS has influence over what types of charges are laid at the end of an investigation. The Board of Police Commissioners needs to enforce a system that's not based on Regina Police investigating Regina Police, and a system where every breach is treated as a potential criminal matter on par with the lifelong insecurity and trauma forced upon victims. An internal letter was leaked to Just Bins from within the police service or the Board of Commissioners for the purpose that the leak so effectively served to expose the complainant's identity on a social media platform known for hate trolling, racism, and misogyny. To our knowledge, no one has ever been held accountable for this, though it shouldn't be hard to discover who did it. Under the Public Inquiries Act, you have the power to summon Mr. Snook of Just Bins and others and compel them to testify under oath and hand over records. And I can't do that as a citizen, but you can do it as my citizens' representatives. In the larger picture, these aren't one-off cases to be dealt with individually and then considered closed. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association calls police database breaches a systemic problem. And for example, in 2019, a Toronto constable snooped through data, obtained the cell number of a domestic violence survivor, and then pursued her via text messages, which sounds so familiar. It was dealt with internally and with docked pay and only came to light through a journalism investigation. And similarly with the Semenchuk case, that only came to light when he picked on a journalist who had the training and contacts to find out more. We know from talking among ourselves that many cases go unreported through a sense of fear and a sense of the futility of it all. After a male correction guard's safety was threatened through a database breach, Ontario's Inspector General of Policing is finally taking seriously what women and intimate partners have experienced for years by launching a sweeping independent review of all police services and notably also police commission boards just like this one. Yesterday, a Windsor officer was suspended without pay when charged with a database breach, and that's a first. We demand a full, independent query into the cultures and practices that allow information abuse and unauthorized surveillance of citizens to exist and persist. Under the Public Inquiries Act, this board is empowered to summon witnesses and compel evidence in an inquiry, and we call on you to exercise that authority. Speaking about the Ontario breaches, Scott Wortley, professor and acting director at the Centre for Criminology and Sociological Studies at the U of T, said in a media interview, "My question would be how many instances go undetected? How common is this practice among officers? How is it promoted and sanctioned among officers within particular units? And what's the certainty of punishment?" And those are good questions here too. Such an inquiry must be independent and inclusive of community perspectives, Survivors must be consulted throughout the process and must be treated with utmost care, support, and trauma-informed approaches. In closing, we see an opportunity for the Commission to lead the way forward for police commissions and police services across Canada. That requires commissioners who are willing to demonstrate leadership by meeting with community voices who are demanding justice. Thank you. And I have a copy of our letter with the signatures to enter into the record for the clerk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We'll collect the letters after for sure, and then I'll just ask if any members have any questions for you. Okay, I see no questions for you today, so you can return to the gallery. Thank you for your presentation. And I'll just maybe, if someone wants to just grab push the button on the mic for me there, just so we don't get any feedback or anything on the speakers. Perfect, thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll now consider item PO 26-16, open letter and petition RPS privacy abuses, and I'll ask Chief Davies to please introduce the report.
Good morning. Thank you. We appreciate everyone being here today. We appreciate the delegations who are here today, the media who are here today as well. So certainly the Regina Police Service takes these matters very seriously. The work to strengthen the RPS access and privacy program has been underway for several years, and some of it predates actually the report of the Privacy Commissioner. Some of that work includes random audits, the establishment of our Access and Privacy Unit. We added another position to that unit in 2026. And I think we've heard loud and clear from the community what the expectation is in relation to punishment, in relation to access breaches. I have had very clear communication to all of our staff over the course of my time as chief, number of times, outlining to them that breaches of this manner are not appropriate and will be dealt with much more severely. I think we have clearly heard from the public what the expectation is in terms of appropriate penalties in relation to these cases, and that is something that I fully will consider in any cases going forward. So I can assure the board that we are committed to this work. We appreciate that the trust of the public is key in order for us to serve the public, and we are happy to work with the board in whatever that might look like in order to make any appropriate changes or improvements to our system as the board deems necessary.
Okay, thank you, Chief Davies. So we'll move to questions from the board. I'm going to start with a couple just based on what I heard from our delegations there. So just, I know there was a number of recommendations that came forward. Chief, can you maybe speak to the number of recommendations and the kind of the status of implementing and how we are taking, and the board has endorsed putting the time and effort into ensuring that we are taking those recommendations and implementing them?
Absolutely. So the Privacy Commissioner in her report did have a number of recommendations, 9, I believe. So the Regina Police Service has implemented or is working to implement all of them, save 2. So there was a recommendation that the police officer's access to eyes be permanently revoked. That essentially equates to firing. Police officers need access to our internal records management system to do their job. The next recommendation had said if the officer's access is not revoked, there should be audits. Those audits are in place for a period of 2 years. Those audits have taken place already. They will continue to take place. There has been no new breaches that have been detected. And then the only other one that we have not fully implemented at this point is that the Privacy Commissioner recommended that we, within our internal records management system, implement a space where officers need to put the reason for their query in there. Our current records management system does not have the ability for us to do that. We have reached out to our vendor and we've asked for that to happen. So that work is ongoing in terms of having that in place in the future. But again, that conversation is occurring. And all of the other recommendations have been fully implemented, including obviously forwarding that case to the Crown for consideration of criminal code and or charges under LA FOIP.
Okay, thank you. And then just, can you comment on, there was a note made about RPS having control over the recommended charges. Can you just explain how that process works, just so we understand?
Certainly. So we forward that file over to prosecutions. At that point, the Regina Police Service has nothing to do with the determination of if there are charges, the prosecution, any of that. So our role in that is completely done. We don't have any input in terms of what that looks like. As soon as we send that file over to prosecutions, we are essentially done with it.
Okay, look to any other members that have questions. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the delegates. It's very seldom that we see public delegates at this forum, so it's nice to see that public voice before the board. So thank you for that. In terms of allegations for the chief, we see allegations for different things. Could you give us a sense of what the forum looks like for investigating various types of investigations? Because they're not oftentimes just internal, correct?
Certainly. So any member of the public can make a complaint about the Regina Police Service. They can do that here at our police station. They can do it through the Public Complaints Commission. There is actually an online form. Someone can do it through their computer at home, no matter where they are. They can initiate a complaint through any police service in the province, through the FSIN. Any of those avenues are an access point for anyone to make a complaint about the Regina Police Service. Anytime we receive a complaint, we forward that to the Public Complaints Commission, and we ask for direction in terms of what should happen next. So sometimes they will take on the investigation, the Public Complaints Commission will. Sometimes they will direct our professional standards to do the investigation, or in some cases they might ask for another body to do the investigation, another police service.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions from members? Okay. Okay, with that, I just wanted to mention briefly again and to highlight the commissioner's comments there. Thank you to all those who have come out today. Yeah, we do rarely see, but this is incredibly important, and we appreciate that the public sentiment has come forward to highlight this. And in talking with our chief, I have very high confidence that the message is being hard and loud and clear that these types of accesses are 100% unacceptable. And I know the board beside me, it feels the same way. This has highlighted the need for work to be done. We're doing that work. A lot of the recommendations have been implemented, which I appreciate Chief and her team working on that diligently and quickly because of the importance of this. So I just want to say before we receive this report, I just want to say thank you for coming today. Your voice matters. This is important. The trust of our police service is paramount to the safety of our community, and I really appreciate everybody coming out today. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to receive and file this report and the information enclosed. Councillor Siklees, I'll call the question. Any opposed? And carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item PO 26-17, 2025 Pursuit Review Board Year-End Report. Chief Davies, I'll go back to you to introduce the report, please.
Certainly, thank you. So this is a report that we bring to the board annually. It is reporting that we also do to the Saskatchewan Police Commission. So we have Inspector Sean Fenwick here this morning. He will present the pursuit numbers from 2025. Inspector Fenwick is the chair of the Pursuit Review Board. As I mentioned, this is an annual report, and it's in efforts to highlight the work that happens in our community and to increase transparency. So I'll turn it over to Sean as soon as he's set up.
Thanks, Chief. Good morning, Mayor and members of the board. Good to go? just get some IT queued up here. So good morning. I am Sean Fenwick, and I'm the inspector in charge of the North District of Regina, as well as chairperson for the Pursuit Review Board. The Regina Police Service is committed to ensuring that all vehicle pursuits are reviewed for compliance and adherence to federal laws, provincial standards, and local policies. The Pursuit Review Board is comprised of 7 members, sergeant rank and above. Those members are from all 3 divisions within our service, and we also have a member of the RPA assigned as an observer. The Pursuit Review Board operates with definitions corresponding to 4 levels to adhere to the Saskatchewan Police Commission standards. The categories and standards are as follows, as you'll see them on the screen. Level 1, the action and tactic was appropriate and fully compliant with policy. Level 2, the pursuit action or tactic was appropriate but less than fully compliant with policy. Coaching and training is provided as a result of that. And then level 3, the pursuit action or tactic was inappropriate, no criminal charges were laid, and remedial or disciplinary action is sometimes undertaken. And level 4, the pursuit action or tactic was inappropriate and criminal charges are laid. I want to also talk about the thorough assessments that we do as a board. We obviously review all the reports, in-car camera associated to that event. There are supervisor critiques that take place. That's where some of the coaching also happens. The audio transmission, and if there is something that deserves a deeper dive, we also have GPS in all of our cars as well that can be accessed. So in 2025, RPS members were involved in 4 incidents deemed to be pursuits as defined by the Regina Police Service policy and the Saskatchewan Police Commission. This was consistent with 2024, which saw members involved in 3 pursuits. In incidents where the pursuit was categorized as a level 2, supervisory consultation took place. In each case, the incident was considered and applicable recommendations for coaching and training was implemented through the shift watch commander, direct supervisors, and sometimes the pursuit review board members. In the incident where the pursuit was categorized as level 3, supervisory intervention took place following consultation with our chief. The recommendation for the method of correction was coaching, training through the pursuit review board and the shift watch commander. The incident was adequately addressed through coaching and training. Following the correction, the memorandum was completed and forwarded to the member's district inspector as well as the professional standards section. Although the incident was determined to be a level 3, the risk created by the pursuit was determined to be relatively minor in nature. But there were potential risks which forced us to categorize it as a level 3 to ensuring that coaching and mentoring took place. In addition to the pursuits captured, police were involved in 114 evade files from 2025. An evade occurs when an officer attempts to conduct a vehicle stop and a person suspected of violating a traffic or safety act or criminal code chooses not to stop for the police. So we saw an 11% increase from 24 to 25. From 103, they rose to 114. But I don't think that there was an alarming concern as a result of those close numbers. There's certainly suspects that continue to not stop for police, but I think we have a good handle on that. It's important to accurately report the number of evade police incidents. These numbers are meaningful as they depict the constant risk assessments our members make on a regular basis. Risk assessments take into account risk to the public, the police, and the subject, as well as the seriousness of the precipitating offense. In 2025, our members reported 114 incidents involving the subject evading. Our members made the decision to engage in a pursuit just 4 times. The number of pursuits have been steadily decreasing. This can be attributed to several factors. The addition of our aerial support unit has been a great tool for reducing the risk involved in pursuits. Offenders are being apprehended more often with decreased risk utilizing the aerial support unit. Regina has also seen a steady decline in the quantity of stolen vehicles, which has an impact on evades and ultimately pursuits. Stats show the stolen auto reports decreased from 914 in 2001 down to 402 in 2025, so that equates to a 56% decrease. Other factors worth mentioning is increased training, increased oversight into risk assessments and police pursuits, but I also want to tell you our members are strong risk assessors. In 2025, RPS members deployed a tire deflation device 22 times. A tire deflation device is a device designed to deflate tires issued by the Regina Police Service for that purpose. Members may use tire deflation devices as defined by the Municipal Police Equipment and Regulations Act 1991 to stop fleeing vehicles when it's reasonably appropriate based on the potential loss of vehicle control. Of the 22 tire deflation deployments, that were related to only 15 separate occurrences, as sometimes more than one deployment is required. The Regina Police Service considers tire deflation deployments a use of force. The Pursuit Review Board reviews each deployment to ensure deployments are safe and adherence with departmental policy. The Pursuit Review Board also plays a crucial role in overseeing the use of various police tactics, meticulously reviewing all instances where a vehicle immobilization tactic is employed. The RPS utilizes special tactics for vehicle immobilization when dealing with high-risk situations, such as an impaired driver asleep at the wheel or a driver posing a significant threat to public safety or themselves. The primary goal in these interventions is to safely immobilize the vehicle while minimizing risk to the public. Officers and the subject also need to be considered in this risk assessment. Due to the inherent dangers of these maneuvers, only properly trained and qualified officers are authorized to perform them. Specifically, tactical vehicle immobilization can only be carried out by members who have completed necessary training and are using designated vehicles. For complex scenarios, SWAT vehicle interdiction tactics, including boxing and deliberate vehicle contact, are reserved exclusively for SWAT members who have undergone specialized SWAT vehicle interdiction tactics training, and they're also using designated vehicles. The use of SWAT tactics requires strict authorization. If a subject is stationary, the commanding NCO must authorize boxing or pinning maneuvers. However, if the vehicle is mobile, these deliberate contact tactics can only be approved by either a watch commander or the critical incident commander. This tiered authorization system ensures appropriate oversight and decision-making during dynamic and potentially dangerous situations. So last year we had a total of 8. 4 we considered a level 1, and 4 we considered a level 2. So we felt they were safe and justifiable, however, ventured somewhat from the recommended policy. That concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you, Inspector. Any questions from members? Go ahead, Commissioner Singh.
Thank you, Inspector. Thank you for the report. I think sometimes in report, the main crux gets lost. If I can get you to quickly touch base upon why out of the 114 evades, only 4 were seen as being eligible to be pursued, and then other tactics that are used, and all the resources that help, so that it's crux and easy for public to understand rather than listening to the whole report.
Yeah, sure, thanks. That's a good question. So that's the risk assessment that I talked about. And someone fleeing the police in a vehicle without disregard to safety to themselves, police, or the public, it can be a very dangerous situation. So that's where we assess the risk in terms of why would we pursue that person. If it's a stolen property or simply an evade, maybe a traffic safety offense, the risk created by us pursuing would not work out in favor of the public, police, or the suspect. So very few times do we think that we need to create that risk to the public or ourselves to catch the offender. We do have other investigative tactics. There's video everywhere. We have our identification center where we can utilize fingerprints and DNA and things like that. So it doesn't mean our investigation is done. It just means we need to find a safer way to keep the offender accountable.
Thank you. So just want to summarize that when we say 114 evades and only 4 pursuits, we didn't let culprits get away or anything. We just use different tactics.
Exactly,
And
yes.
so making sure that public is not harmed in any way.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for summarizing that. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for the presentation, Inspector. I think we're good for
Thanks
that
for the
part.
time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Can I have a motion to receive and file the report? Everybody at once. Commissioner Bailey will take you. I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? And carried. Okay, next we'll consider PO 26-18, use of force year-end 2025. Chief Davies, back to you to introduce the report.
Certainly. Similarly, this is an annual report that we bring to the board. It's also reported to the Saskatchewan Police Commission in relation to instances where force was used. We have Inspector Brad Walter here. Inspector Walter is the chair of our Use of Force Review Board. So he is going to walk us through the 2025 numbers and statistics and tell us a little bit about the oversight that goes into reviewing use of force incidents. Over to you, Brad, when you're ready to go.
Good morning, Mayor Bashinsky and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the 2025 Use of Force Review Board year-end report. I'm going to take you through kind of three phases of this report. One will be sort of a general overview and a discussion on the use of force model, which police officers receive training in. I'll give you some background on how the process works for reporting use of force and how we review it. And then we'll talk about some statistical numbers from 2025. Excuse me. So the Use of Force Review Board is made up of 7 members and 1 Regina Police Association observer. We examine all reportable uses of force involving RPS members, and we ensure that they adhere to federal laws, provincial standards, and internal policies. So just moving over to the use of force model. The use of force model is a nationwide model that helps us understand use of force. Various agencies have some of their own interpretations of this model, but this one's fairly standard across Canada. It was developed and adopted in Saskatchewan in around the year 2000. It's a graphical representation of the elements involved in the use of force, and it helps us understand why and in what manner an officer may respond with force. And as we'll get into the model, you'll see that it also talks about a continuous critical assessment throughout the situation, which means we are continually evolving our response. The use of force model is made up of 6 principles. The primary responsibility of a peace officer is to protect and preserve life, number 1. The primary objective of any use of force is to ensure public safety. Police officer safety is essential to public safety. And the use of force model is a guide. It does not replace or augment the law. The law speaks for itself. The model reflects federal statute law and case law, and it is not intended to dictate policy in any agency. So again, it's a guideline, an overview for us. I won't get into too much detail on the criminal code, but I just wanted to make the point that there is criminal code sections that do dictate how police can respond and what we can do. So Section 25 protects those authorized by law to do anything in the enforcement of the law. If you're acting on reasonable grounds, it allows you to use as much force as is necessary. And having said that, the force must be proportional and not exceed what is necessary. Section 26 then holds us as police officers criminally responsible if excessive force is used by enforcing the law. And if the force goes beyond what is reasonable or necessary, then police officers can be held criminally responsible. And Section 27 justifies police officers using as much force as reasonable. And it gets into a lot of detailed stuff on when you're arresting on view or in relation to whether there's a warrant, et cetera. So we won't dig too deep into that. But there is criminal code that does provide guidance for us. So there was a circular model that was up there a few slides ago that was called the use of force model. The very center core of that is what we're going to talk about now. That's the assessment process. So the very center core of that is the situation. Obviously, police are always, if they're going to tend out to something, it's usually because there's a situation that's occurring. And the point of this part of the model is to say that it's always changing. So when we arrive and throughout the entire process, we have to continually assess, plan, and act. So we'll assess what's going on, interpret it, come up with a plan of action or inaction, depending what's most appropriate, and then we'll enact that plan. Okay, and it's affected by 6 different factors, things like the environment, the number of subjects, the perceived abilities of the subject, the knowledge of the subject, how much time and distance we have to operate within, whether we can create distance and continue to assess, or if we're in tight and have to take action immediately. And then potential attack signs that we might see from whatever we're dealing with, whether it's an individual who's posturing to fight or flexing their fists or making statements, advancing on an officer, those kinds of things. So those are all factors which will affect the situation. As we move out on the model, further out into the circle, we have the subject behaviors. Subject behaviors could stem from being fully cooperative, where a use of force is not going to be required. Passive resistant, where they just won't, they're not taking any overt action to stop police's action, but they are not helping in any way either. So, for example, you could use a protester who's just dead weight laid down on the ground and just won't do anything, and now we have to deal with that. Active resistance is where they're taking action to stop the police. They're not trying to assault the police or do anything to harm the police, but you go to take their hand to handcuff them and they push your hand away. That's active resistance. Assaultive is where they are, as it says, trying to assault a police officer or another individual. And finally, the most serious one is the threat of grievous bodily harm or death. So there's 2 separate factors that might affect an officer's overall assessment, and that's their perception and the tactical considerations we have for the situation. So they're represented in the same areas of the model, and perception primarily will explain why 2 officers' responses may be different. Each individual officer is a unique human being that sees things differently, and therefore their perception could be different. So it may indicate why one officer may choose a course of action that's different than another course of action. They are interrelated, and therefore they're graphically represented in the same area of the model. So some of the factors that could influence an officer's perception is their ability, their strength and overall fitness, their experience, both personal and professional. It influences the way they're going to think and see things. How much skills and training they have. Like if they're a highly trained officer, they're going to have more options and probably respond in a better way, a more balanced way. Fears. What do you see when you walk up? What fears do you have going into that situation? What gender influences could be involved? Fatigue. Is this incident that we're dealing with happening at the beginning of the shift when we're fresh and ready to go? Or is it happening after a 12 or, if you're on overtime, a 15-hour shift where you're fatigued, you're mentally tired, you're physically tired? Or fatigue can also factor in the duration. If you're in a fight and, this goes longer than 30 seconds, a minute, whatever it is, are you starting to fatigue from that? It's going to affect your perception. Injuries. Is an officer coming in with a pre-existing injury? Are they injured during a struggle? Those kinds of situations can be influenced by, will influence our perception. And then one that we often overlook, but it's quite important, is your sight, your angle and point of view and positioning in the room. So if typically officers will set up in a we call it a tactical L or a tactical situation where we don't stand side by side with each other. If we're in a room, they usually span out and get different perspective and divide attention of whoever they're dealing with. One officer might see something from one side of the room that the officer on the other side of the room can't see, or vice versa, because their view is blocked or they just don't see it, those kinds of things. So sight and angle and point of view is very important in perception, and it also explains why one officer took action that maybe another officer did not. As we move out, we get into the colored triangle, or colored circle, sorry, part of the circle. We have the various different response options that police officers have when they attend. And typically, it always starts with officer presence. Just by virtue of arriving on scene as a police officer in uniform, likely in a marked car, that invokes a certain reaction in all individuals. You can think of that typical response that you may or may not have had. I know I've had it in a previous life before I was a police officer. You're driving down the street in your car, minding your own business, and a police car pulls up behind you. I mean, you've done nothing wrong, and there's no reason to believe they're going to even have an interaction, but initially it does have an impact on that individual. They start to think, okay, my seatbelt on, did I do something wrong, and am I driving okay? So just by virtue of showing up in a uniform, we have an influence on a situation. Next one is communication. That's where we interact with the individual. We have direction, verbal, nonverbal direction to the person. Then we move into physical control, and that ranges from soft physical control all the way up to hard physical control. So examples of soft physical control would be simply just taking somebody by the hand, pulling their hand behind their back and putting handcuffs on. Could be guiding them by the arm out the door. Something simple as that. All the way up to hard physical control, which is typically seen as strikes, kicks, punches, those kinds of things. Next one is in the orange. It's the intermediate weapons, and that ranges all the way from conducted energy weapons to less lethal impact munitions to baton, those kinds of things. Anything that's an intermediate weapon. And then finally in the red is the highest level of force, which would be lethal force, which would be when we perceive grievous bodily harm or death. So moving on from that, that's about, what, a 5-minute, 10-minute presentation on something that police officers spend, hours or a full day discussing and learning about in their recruit training, and then subsequently throughout their careers revisited on a regular basis in training. But that gives you just a general overview of what police officers have to think about very quickly, sometimes in very high-stress situations, sometimes not, but certainly in high-stress situations. So it's a little more complex than just some people maybe understand. So use of force for 2025. The Saskatchewan Police Commission mandates all municipal police services to report on the use of force statistics. We do it on a quarterly and an annual basis, and those reports go over to the Saskatchewan Police Commission. When we're gathering the stats and formulating how we lay out the stats, we have a couple of different numbers that you'll see, and it can get a bit confusing, but we'll just simplify it down. An event is where we go and attend to a situation like we just talked about in the use of force model. Within that event, there could be multiple individual uses of force. So there could be something as simple as where a canine dog is deployed, where a conducted energy weapon is deployed, and there could be physical strikes involved. So there's 3 individual instances of use of force all in one event. So the statistics will reflect both of those categories. So when force is used, what happens? Well, the first thing an officer has to do when there's been a use of force they need to immediately report it to their field supervisor. The field supervisor is then tasked with doing a review and an overview and a critique. They will gather memorandums from the officers who are involved. They will look at any video that's available and gather any video that's available. If there's any relevant photographs that need to be taken, whether it's injuries, et cetera, or just other observations that we want to capture, photographs will be gathered, and any other information that's available to us. Once that field supervisor has all the information they need to review, they will review and complete what we call a critique, and complete with corrective action if required. So if the field supervisor sees something that needs to be adjusted, that there's a problem with, they're expected to immediately implement corrective action. Because there is a time lag between the time the incident happens to the time the board reviews it, meets, implements action and corrective action. That could be 3 months. And we don't want an officer not understanding that they did something incorrectly and having that continue X number of times between the time we get corrective action back to them. So the supervisors are required to do that. So the review board, the package, it's a fairly thick package of all the memos, et cetera. That comes up to the review board. The review board will examine the use of force package individually. We will make notes on it as individual members, what our thoughts are, if we have any issues or any concerns, and we record all that. Then we will convene and discuss each individual file. Some obviously take much more discussion than others. Some are quite straightforward, don't require a lot of discussion. It's then assigned a category or a level for each one of those individual uses of force. If we need to take further follow-up action, and that is either sent back to the supervisor for more action, or a board member will then get involved and speak with the officers and the supervisors if that's necessary. All of that information is reported to the Saskatchewan Police Commission and the Regina Board of Police Commissioners. Excuse me. So the classifications that we talked about, each one of those individual uses of force is classified very similar to what Inspector Fenwick reported on pursuit. Level 1 is the force used was appropriate and it was compliant with policy. So we had no issues or concerns around how that force was, that situation was handled. A level 2 is where we still think the force used was appropriate, but maybe there's some things that could have been done strategically better, or another option that might have worked out a little bit better. So we will then have coaching or training that goes back to that officer saying, you didn't do anything wrong, but next time we would like you to consider these other ways of handling this. Level 3 is where we determine that the force was inappropriate, but it's not something that would be pursued with criminal charges. It's more around a training issue, an experience issue, that kind of thing. So something along the lines of remedial training would be implemented, or disciplinary action would be instituted internally through the chief. In level 4, we determined the force was inappropriate and criminal charges should be, it says laid there, but we don't decide if criminal charges are laid. We say we feel that this should be looked at for criminal charges, and that will get forwarded up through the chief and over to the Sask Police Commission and potentially prosecutor's office to determine if charges are related. But level 4 for us as a board is that we have concerns around, significant concerns around the incident. So what happened in 2025? Well, in 2025, the number of events that we attended where force was used increased by 16%. The separate individual uses of force that were used increased by 27%. And I'll talk in a second here. The restraint chair, which we use in detention to help protect people, saw a decrease of 30%. Really not a significant statistic, even though it's a large number. We'll talk a little bit about that. But really the key one I want us to focus on, and we'll go through the rest of the presentations, is that 27% increase of separate uses of force, seeing them go from 264 to 335, 71 more last year. I'll explain all that as we go through. So I think I covered the first parts of that slide. I'll talk about the restraint chair. The restraint chair is a safety chair that's down in our detention area. And when individuals are brought in, very often under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and they're they're combative and not cooperative, and they're either going to harm themselves or damage police property in their detention in the detention area or in their cell. Our NCO down there, our sergeant, has the ability to make a decision to set them in a restraint chair. And it's basically a padded chair with restraints, and we put them in that chair. For example, we've had people, just a classic example is somebody who's high on drugs and is smashing their head in the glass of the detention cell. We can't allow that to continue because they're going to harm themselves. So we put them in the restraint chair where they can't do harm to themselves, and we monitor them continuously. So in our detention area, we have staff, 2 sergeants and special constable staff. We also have a paramedic there that will do regular checks on that individual. We monitor them and do checks every 15 minutes. They're placed in an area where there's full video camera coverage right by where the booking area is, so we can do periodic checks and monitor them until they calm down. When we do those check-ins, we try to assess if they've calmed themselves down. Once they've calmed down or the drugs are no longer impacting them significantly, then we take them out of the chair and we place them in their cell when we feel that they're going to be able to be safe. All of that activity is reported to us in a restraint chair similar to a use of force package, but all of that is reported to us as a board, a review board, and they have to indicate did they get permission from the watch commander to do this. The watch commander has to be notified if the detention period in that chair is over 2 hours. They have to, every hour after that, they have to get an extension. So there's a lot of thought that goes into whether that person goes in the chair and how long they stay in that chair. So it's not where they just get put in there and left. It's a very monitored process. So we saw a decrease last year from 23 down to 16. Those numbers fluctuate from year to year. They're situational depending on who we bring into the detention block and what state they're in. It depends on who's down there as an NCO and a supervisor and what their experience level is and their decision making is. I mean, we had years as high as 23 or 24 or more. We've been down as low as 8. So it's really situational, and based on all the reports that we reviewed, we don't have a concern with that category. So getting back to the statistics around the use of force and the frequency of the use of force, we said we did have an increase of 27% or 71 individual uses of force. Last year, the Regina Police Service attended, this is dispatch numbers only from our comm center, 59,277 incidents or police contacts out in the community. And that, again, that's just uniform response from comm center. Of those 59,000 interactions, we saw 199 events that resulted in some use of force. And again, 335 individuals within those 199 events. That is less than 1/5000th of a percent. So well below 1% of the time are we even having to use force. So yeah, we had a 27% increase. First you see that stat, you go, what's going on? And we'll talk a little bit about that. But this is very consistent from year to year to year. Actually, that 59,000 number varies anywhere, has seemed to vary anywhere from 58 to 61,000 calls or contacts. It goes up and down. What never seems to change is it's always less than 1%. So we're very consistent from year to year to year on what force the Regina Police Service is using. So how did those, what's really I think important is how did those 335 uses of force, how did they break down when we analyzed them? 310 of them were level 1s, so force appropriate and met policy. 22 of them were level 2s, which were, again, force appropriate, but some coaching and some corrective direction from the NCOs or from the board. We had 3 level 3s, and if I'm recalling, a couple of those were accidental discharges of firearms in the range when they were unloading into a safety bucket, which is not good, but not anything significant out in the community as far as use of force. So we are a very low percentages of incidents of use of force that are concerning or should be concerning. Another interesting statistic that has received attention over the years is our canine arrests, utilizing the dog. So there was 173 times last year that the dog was utilized in an arrest. Of those 173 times, 43 of them resulted in a canine contact, which is a bite. And so that's 25% of the time where the dog is deployed, it's going to result in a canine bite. Canine members attended 4,516 calls for service last year. So the dog only came out of the car 173 times in an enforcement action. So again, it shows you the dog isn't just automatically brought out. There's an assessment, a thought process that goes behind. And I'm not a canine officer, so I won't speak too much about what they do because I don't have that expertise. But there is a thought process every time they get out of the car. The dog doesn't automatically go with them. It's situational. Canine officers made 159 criminal arrests on their own without the use of the dog. And our contacts with canine is very consistent over the last 3 years. It went from 39 to 31 to 43. Some of that has to do with, again, number of dogs deployed in the field, number of officers available, those kinds of, and situational stuff as well. Of the canine deployments, 41 of them were level 1, 2 of them were level 2. We had no level 3s or 4s in the canine area this year, which is positive. We have had situations in the past where we had to deal with some things, but this year was a good year for that, and no concerns from the board there. So let's get into some of the notable statistics for 2025. These are some of the things that did see a jump that led to that increase in 27%. So firearms pointed. 2 years ago, 2024, we had 17 firearms pointed, and they were all level 1s. This year, we had 31. 2025, we had 31 firearms pointed, level 1, and 2 level 2s. So we've doubled. And again, I have no clear indicators that stand out when we read the reports and that, but as a board and discussing it, what it kind of indicates is that our officers are perceiving a higher level of risk and a higher threat level in order for them to pull their firearm and point it at someone. They don't take that lightly, but that's the level of response that their perception, the situation, and the circumstances is dictating for them to respond to. So we did have a first indicator of that they may be encountering a higher level of threat. So force was appropriate on all of those. The next interesting statistic, which I'm still trying to figure out completely, but it's not a bad statistic, it's just an interesting one, is in 2024, so takedowns and throws. A takedown would be where we pull somebody to the ground, or we have to push somebody down to the ground, that kind of thing. Or if you're running behind somebody, you're chasing somebody, and you catch up, and as you hit them, and they fall forward and land on the ground. So takedowns and throws. They're only reportable if there's an injury or a complaint of injury. So oftentimes the takedowns can happen and there's no use of force. What we do see with takedowns, though, typically, whether it's on the street or even in our detention area where there's a hard surface, is typically when somebody does get taken down, there can be scrapes, abrasions, minor injuries, so then they're reportable. So we went from 37 total in 2024 up to 68, so again, almost doubling the takedowns. And we'll get into another stat in a minute that talks about multiple officer involvements. We're seeing more officers choosing to work as a team in a tandem and taking people to the ground. Without injury, that's not a bad stat because that's soft physical control, which is really low on the use of force model. When there's an injury, hopefully it's just scrapes and bumps and bruises and it's nothing significant, but it does show that officers are, rather than going to hard physical control or intermediate weapons, they are working in tandem to take people to the ground and use a control versus a strike. The good news on that, again, is that all of those forces, once reviewed, fell into a level 1 or a level 2 category, so force was appropriate. Another interesting statistic or notable statistic for 2025 is the increase in less lethal impact munitions contact with a person. So I know in the private session I explained to you guys a little bit about what a 40 mil impact munition is. It's basically used from a distance that allows officers to reach out from a distance and have an impact on an individual rather than having to jeopardize safety and close in. Historically, that tool was only used by our tactical team for a large number of years, and then there's great value in it for our patrol officers. It's now made its way into patrol as a available weapon, and some policy changes last year have really changed why that number has gone up from 2 to 16. Again, it looks like a big jump, but what we've done is we've allowed our NCOs to authorize the use of it, and we've given significant more training to our frontline members and deployed the tool out into the cars. So the tool is just more available now than it was before. Therefore, its use is higher. Therefore, our numbers have gone up. There's no significant injury reports coming out of any of those 16 deployments. Nothing concerning there. It's just, again, a number thing that you can get caught up on when you're looking at the statistics. I don't know. I had no other name to give this other than I call it high impact incidents. I'm not sure why I used that, but really what it was trying to explain and get a better understanding of what's going out in the field. So we looked at statistics around the number of incidents where more than 2 individual uses of force had to be used. So again, strikes and a conducted energy weapon, or a baton and a canine deployment. In 2024, we had 11 incidents where more than 2 uses of force were utilized, and associated to that were 49 individual uses of force. In 2025, we tripled that. We went from up to 33 incidents, resulting in an increase of 100, or associated number of uses of force of 125. So that's a pretty significant jump in what our officers are seeing. So again, that tells us, or indicates, without being able to scientifically analyze it, just based on the reports we have, it tells us our officers are seeing more resistance in the field because they're having to use more than one type of use of force to get a result. All right, and then again, on that theme, multiple officer involvements. How many incidents did we see where more than one officer had to use force? And again, we saw an increase from 40 in 2024 up to 63 incidents, and again, 90 to 158 associated uses of force. And we saw a couple, one example would be a very significant incident we had that ended up having to deploy right outside the city, to continue outside of the city to resolve. There was 11 uses of force involved. And that ranged all the way from canine deployment to 40 mil impact munition to physical strikes, all of that. So we're seeing more significant incidents where more than one officer has to deploy force. So just to summarize, as we talked a little bit about, we're always striving for continuous improvement. We're utilizing continuous feedback and coaching by our NCOs, reviewed by the board to make sure that we're satisfied with the implemented coaching and training. And we certainly spent a significant amount of time working with our field supervisors and our frontline members to make sure they articulate things and explain things in a way that it's very clear and understandable what they perceived, what they knew going into the event, what type of force, what type of subject behaviors they were encountering, why they took the action that they did, and what the result was. So quite a high level of detail for our reporting, and quite a significant amount of review on the board side of things. So we're trying to continuously improve our understanding of the appropriate application of force. And our training, again, we have a very strong training group in our defensive tactics cadre. They work through improving officer perception and assessment. They certainly focus on worst case scenario as well as less than worst case scenario, so that we were able to de-escalate, and we don't just walk into everything thinking it's going to be up here. You assess and determine what you have, and you take an appropriate response based on what you're seeing. So a great deal of time also working on de-escalation through communication. And I already talked about the articulation. So in conclusion, 2025, we saw an increase of 16% in events, 27% in separate uses of force, Our two main categories, we maintain a very high percentage of use of force in level 1 and level 2. 99.1% of all uses of force were in a level 1 or a level 2 category, which again goes back to force appropriate. We had 3 level 3s and no level 4s, which is good. And that's all I have for you today, unless there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Inspector, for the presentation today. Any questions from members? Go ahead, Commissioner Brooks.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm not sure if the board has seen this information before, but I found it very interesting because I'm not sure how I thought officers determined what they needed to do when they were at an incident there, but there's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of accountability, and so I think it was a really good report to bring to the public so that they can see officers don't just have free rein to do what they want. There's a calculated science behind it, and then they're continuously assessing it through a stressful situation. So I guess I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say I think the public really needed to see this report. Thank you.
Other questions from members? Councillor Siklees, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Brad, for the report showing, I guess, 264 use of force incidents in 2024, rising to 335 last year. These represent, like we said, well under 1% of our calls. So I'm not looking to create a major new project, but that said, it's generally very difficult to compare these stats meaningfully with other police services. I've tried. And that's due to differing definitions and differing reporting. And it's not just in this case, but it's in many of our functions as a force. So I guess my question is, and maybe Laura Lee wants to jump in on this too, what steps, if any, could we take to support sort of a broader national standardization effort through the, I guess, CACP or Public Safety Canada or other organizations? And how might some of that, lighter touch benchmarking can help provide better context without significant additional workload, and that way makes us even more accountable and more transparent to the public?
Well, just get you to throw your mic back on there.
Sorry. I have a partial answer. I'm not an expert on how they handle it, but the Saskatchewan Police Commission gathers statistics from all of the agencies across Saskatchewan, and they have a standard form that we have to, that's really why you see a lot of the categories there, is because that's kind of what we're told we have to slot these into. So I have never personally compared us with other agencies in Saskatchewan. They would, we can probably get that. They would have that information. Again, I don't know if, they don't ask us calls for service and that kind of thing, so I don't know directly. But as far as pure numbers of how many conducted energy weapons were deployed in Estevan, they would be able to tell that, because everyone else has to report as well.
I'll
Chief,
jump
go ahead.
in there as well, certainly. So as Brad has indicated, all uses of force are reported to the Saskatchewan Police Commission. They do publish a report annually that has all of the numbers for municipal police in the province. So that is publicly available. It'll probably be coming out here in the next couple months. In terms of the national picture, so every province has dictated what they want for their use of force policies. So our policy had to be approved through the commission. Our reporting is approved through the commission. I know that there is a move to have a national use of force model, but there isn't anyone who can actually, outside of Public Safety Canada, I suppose, who can implement that because it is under provincial jurisdiction. Different provinces have different legislation in terms of what that policy looks like. I can tell you that Deputy Chief Laurel Marshall sits on the National Use of Force Committee for the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. So she is in on those discussions, meeting with colleagues across the country in terms of determining best practices. And like I said, I know that there is a push to have that model, but it is really difficult because each province can kind of do their own thing.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have three for you. When we think of use of force, it's usually in the context of an arrest. But as you've already in part alluded to, is it fair to note that use of force is also necessitated to safeguard members of the service, members of the public, and oftentimes the individual themselves?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but
I guess to refrain, I think from a public context, when we look at use of force, it's oftentimes to, apprehend an individual, right? But I think there's more of a layer to that, in that, if there's harm to be done to a member of the service, there's a reaction to prevent that
Yes,
harm to be
yes,
done
certainly.
in the context of that use of force, right?
Yep.
The similar would be said if there was harm to be done to a member of the public.
Yes.
We would see that similar reaction,
100%,
right? So
yes.
in that, what I would, I guess, allude to is that there's kind of more layers to that
Yes.
use of force beyond just affecting an arrest and apprehending
Yes.
an individual.
Yeah, we certainly, when we're called upon, when we arrive on a situation, we have to assess what's going on. And if we have to use force to prevent somebody else from being harmed or assaulted, or even prevent us from being assaulted, yes, that force will be used. Ultimately, it's probably at that point going to lead to an apprehension and an arrest, because likely an
Sure.
assault PO or an assault somebody else charge. But yeah, you're exactly right. It is preventative as well.
Commissioner, I'll just add in there. So if you notice the chart in the report, as Brad has indicated, so a restraint chair is categorized as a use of force. Also, anytime our tactical team is deployed, we consider that a use of force, although there might not be any sort of hands-on sort of situation. Anytime our public order unit is deployed, it's categorized as a use of force. And so not every incident is, as you imagine, sort of a wrestling or what have you, but
Right.
all of those types of things are categorized as uses of force.
Good, and I think that's good context to have. Thank you. Is it also fair, we're looking at the increase in number, to attribute some of that to a growing population in Regina, to a growing service that's enlarging year over year? So with that, we're likely seeing more interactions between public and the service. We've also seen a few cases of exceptionally bad batches of narcotics in the city, be it Regina, Saskatoon, throughout. I would imagine that some of that has greater influence on individual kind of behaviors and how those behaviors are influenced. So some of that might, I imagine, factor into that increase that we're looking at there.
Yeah, I would agree. Although we are seeing probably the result. Fentanyl seems to a little bit different than when we had our meth issues, where it was more aggressive. Fentanyl tends to put people out.
Suppress a little bit.
Right, but the unpredictability is still there. Certainly, when we interact with them, we don't know what we're going to encounter. As far as growing population, yeah, we're seeing that as well, which isn't necessarily reflected in those 60,000, 59,000 calls for service. There are other interactions that we have with the public as well, but that's the large bulk of it. I tried to analyze the stats as best I could and go through the reports and come up with some, a bit of a theme or an understanding, but it's really hard to understand that it's so situational. Like, why did that one go that way and this incident go this way? And
Right.
some of that goes to inexperience or experience, one or the other, of police officers involved. When you're an older police officer, you arguably should have more experience and be able to calm things a little bit better. When you're new, you don't have as much experience. You might make some tactical decisions that this other officer might. Like, it's so situational. It's so dependent on the individuals.
And
I think,
just
sorry, Commissioner, I would also, we've talked the last number of years about the increase of firearms in our communities, and so I think that we would be naive to think that that doesn't play into some of these situations. We are taking more firearms off the street, which of course escalates the sort of the level of response that officers need to have in order to keep themselves and the public safe. And so I think we talk often about the complexity of crime in the city and how that has changed. And so, I think some of that does lead into the increase in use of force. But I would say year over year, sort of when you balance that calls for service and the number of contacts that result in force is very consistently low. I'm sure if we went back 20 years, we would see that same type of equation, I suppose. And I think that speaks to the level of training, the level of de-escalation training that our officers, and clearly the very thorough review that happens in terms of use of force, and then that corrective coaching action. And so, there's an increase overall in terms of the use of force, but when you put that sort of in context of our overall calls for service, it does remain very low.
Perfect, thank you. And just lastly, outside of remedial training, is there some sort of requalification for the force as a whole in terms of use of force? And if so, could you speak a little to that?
We run a block training, I don't know how many weeks it is now, like January till, I think the last one is this week. So officers have to attend a week of training in that time period, and they do defensive tactics and firearms and annual qualifications, and they get recertified and they're conducted energy weapon. All these forces are reviewed on a schedule. I don't know if, like, for example, conducted energy weapons every year, but there's a schedule of you have to be recertified in a lot of these things. Certainly yearly on some, and every couple of years on others.
So continued maintenance of those skills and
100%.
understanding of that model and
Yeah.
and reactions. Perfect. Thank you much.
Any other questions from members? Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you for the presentation, Inspector. Can I have a motion to receive and file that report? Commissioner Brooks, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? And carried. Okay, we will move on to PO 26-19, variance report as of April 30th, 2026. Chief Davies, over to you.
Thank you. So at certain times throughout the year, we report to the board and to the public our variance in relation to our annual budget. April is the first report we do in the year. We've had a couple of months under our belt, so we have a sense of where we're at in terms of expenditures and revenues. So Tracy Raisin, our Manager of Financial Services, is here to report for us our variance as of April 30th.
All right, good morning. So before I begin my presentation, I just wanted to provide a bit of background of RPS financial reporting, just so you understand sort of what our process is. So the Regina Police Service receives an annual budget from the City of Regina, but we manage and administer all of the financial transactions. We're responsible and accountable for our budget, and part of that includes financial reporting to you, the board. So what happens is the financial management here takes a lot of time and effort, but it's very important. So I review every expense and revenue line by line, and then produce monthly reports for anyone here that has financial responsibility. So then what we do is we identify, for example, if the cost of fuel has gone up, we're going to have a deficit in that line. So where can we find a savings in another budget line? So let's withhold that order of that equipment, or another option, basically so we end up with a balanced budget at the end of the year. That's always our goal. So moving on to the actual report, this is the variance report up to April 30th. The variance is the difference between the budget and the actuals. So the first attachment is the operating budget. 33% of the year is now complete, and we've spent 32% of our budget. So we're currently projecting a small surplus, but it's still a surplus of around $26,000. The second attachment is our capital budget. Capital budget is the larger items. Some of our capital programs, the projects we have include asset management, facilities, fleet, emergency services, equipment, information technology. And some of the highlights of those capital programs that we're doing this year include equipment, patrol radios, regular fleet replacement, and information technology software and hardware replacement. So many of the items have been ordered and the projects are ongoing. But there's, of course, some supply issues, and so that's why we've only spent about 15% of our capital budget right now, but all the projects are still on budget. That concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members on the variance? Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. Just for the sake of the public, I'm wondering if you could maybe touch base a little bit on what some of the cost recoveries might be, as well as maybe where some of the external funds come from outside of taxpayer-funded sources. Thank you.
Sure. So we do have cost recovered expenses and revenues. So for example, there's times where the Regina Police Service is asked to assist the RCMP on an investigation. So our members would assist. So sometimes we have travel, overtime, other types of expenses. So once their work is done, we're able to cost recover the officers' expenses back from the RCMP. So their salaries and any other cost for travel or other things. And then cost recovered overtime would be the same thing, where we have been hired to do special duty overtime for an event, and then we are able to bill back that agency or that organization for the overtime, so we recover that. So it's going to show as our overtime as an expense, but then comes back as cost recovered, so we have to show it in both. In regards to external funding, we do receive external funding from the provincial government and the federal government. The majority of that funding is for positions. Over the years, we've had between around 70 to 100 positions funded. There'll be specific funding for like the ICE unit, the crime reduction team unit, those type of things. So we have to put our officers where the funding is applicable, and we get to cost recover that. So that funding provides money for our budget to hire them. Therefore, we do not ask the City of Regina for that funding. Yeah.
So we can say targeted kind of community safety initiatives.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from members? Councillor Seclise?
Budget question. City budget question. I think we've talked about at the city what we're kind of targeting possibly for a mill rate increase. Can we say anything in public about what the police need, where we're at with that?
We have not yet had our first budget meeting of the year. We've set out our expectations for our members. We anticipate, because we presented our 2027 budget last year, that we will be coming in with those numbers. But we're just dipping our toe in the water of fine-tuning, looking at every budget line, as Tracy has indicated. So we will stay tuned, but we don't anticipate coming to the board or to council with any more money than we had highlighted last year for 2027.
Remind me what that was. Was that at 2.2, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive and file the report? Commissioner Singh, I'll call the question. Any opposed? And carried. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, we'll move to PO 26-20, budget transparency and public involvement. I'll go to Chief Davies. Go ahead.
Thank you. So speaking of budget, last year at budget time, we had some questions around the process that RPS puts in place to determine what our budget is, what that looks like in terms of best practices from other agencies. So our analysis unit really dug in and did some work in terms of what other police agencies are doing in relation to budget, what best practices are, and we are bringing that information for you today. So Ms. Cameron Martin is a strategic analyst with our analysis unit, and she's going to walk through some of the information that we learned through our inquiries with other agencies. Cameron?
Thank you and good morning. This report responds to questions about how visible the Regina Police Service's budget process is to the public, how Regina residents can currently participate, and where opportunities exist to improve understanding and engagement throughout the budget cycle. The RPS participates in the City of Regina's public budget process, and detailed budget reports and presentations are publicly available. However, this information is spread across multiple reports, presentations, and meetings, which may make it difficult for residents to follow. While residents can see the final approved budget, they may not fully understand the operational pressures, trade-offs, and analysis behind those decisions. Public expectations around transparency and accountability continue to evolve. True transparency is not just about making information public, it's about making it accessible, understandable, and easy to find. Effective budget transparency builds public trust, supports informed discussion, and strengthens long-term decision-making. The service examined budget transparency practices used by police services across Canada. Common approaches included dedicated budget web pages, plain language summaries, visual materials, explanations of key cost drivers, and structured public communications. All the services balance transparency with operational and security considerations. Based on these findings, the RPS will take practical steps to improve budget information accessibility. The service will create a dedicated webpage that brings budget information together in one place and explains the process in plain language. The page will outline key stages of the budget cycle, clarify the roles of the police service, the board, city administration, and city council, and provide easier access to current and historical budget documents. In addition, the service will implement a communication strategy to help residents better understand the budget process, key timelines, and how budget decisions support police operations and service delivery. Communications will be shared through existing RPS channels, including the website, social media, media releases, and community engagement opportunities. These initiatives will improve visibility into the RPS budget process and make public information easier to find and understand. The goal is to support informed public discussion and strengthen understanding of how police funding decisions are made and support public safety in Regina. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Great, thank you for the report and the presentation. Does any member have any questions? Go ahead, Robert.
I may have missed it, but did we have a approximate launch date for that page?
We're looking at the end of June.
End of June. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll just say thank you for the work on this. I know that's something that came up, and I know the city's gone through a lot of transformation in terms of trying to put more information out and enhance the transparency. So thank you to the work you guys have done and working with the commission and also my fellow councillors, as we've heard that as well. So look forward to another step towards that, and obviously this will be a continuous iterative process as we work through it. So thank you for that. So with that, can I have a motion to receive and file this report? Robert, thank you. I'll call the question. Any opposed? And it's carried. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll go to PO 26-21, Regina Police Service Monthly Crime Overview, April 2026. Chief, back to you.
Thank you. So in April, we saw an overall reported decrease of 2.4% for crime. Crimes against the person decreased by 5.7%, and crimes against property decreased by 1.3%. Obviously, when we're talking decreases, that is good news. I know last month we talked about attempted vehicle thefts as being a pressure point. We'll note that we did charge an individual with multiple offenses. A 41-year-old male was charged with 19 offenses in relation to 7 attempted vehicle thefts. And so our discussion was that sometimes it's one person that can have a significant impact on crimes. And so certainly we found that to be the case in this instance. In relation to homicides, obviously never a good thing. Of note, we have charged and arrested 2 individuals with a homicide that did occur in April. And just highlight the work of our drug unit. 4 individuals were charged following a 2-month investigation that resulted in the seizure of approximately 2.4 kilograms of cocaine and more than $10,000 in cash. We were aware, obviously, in the media around the presence of dangerous drugs in our community. The Regina Police Service responded to 63 overdose events in April, which unfortunately included 7 fatalities. RPS members did assist in saving the lives of 14 people by using naloxone in April. And we continue on that front to try to be proactive. We had 213 transports and admissions to the complex needs facility, which enables folks to be able to have an opportunity to speak with an addictions counselor and get some help in that regard. And so we're seeing good uptake by our officers to transport folks to that facility where they hopefully are able to get the help that they need in order to keep themselves safe. I think those are all the things that I would highlight, but certainly happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Okay, thank you. Do any members have any questions? Robert, go ahead.
If you can speak to it, these large instances of drug busts, seizures, are the folks that we're arresting, are these folks that call Regina home? Are these folks that do business here? What are we seeing any patterns on that front?
A lot of the patterns is that drugs has no jurisdictional boundaries, and so a lot of the high-level projects that our drug unit and our investigative services division have been investigating involve collaborative efforts with other police jurisdictions as well. And so to say home, I would say no, it's just constantly a moving, I guess, people involved in the drug world. They're always kind of moving from place to place.
So I guess it would be fair to say that an arrest of this type might also reduce, narcotic use in Saskatoon or our neighboring communities and vice versa as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's across, I would say, largely our work with Alberta and Manitoba.
Okay.
There's a lot of movement back and forth between those three provinces.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Singh, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, what do you feel would be the impact on the police services with regards to the passing of the Compassionate Intervention Act? Do you guys see that it'll lead to increased numbers where you've mentioned there were 213 individuals that were moved to the complex need facilities? Would do you expect those numbers to go up, and in what manner?
So the regulations have not been enacted yet, and so I think that there's some fine print that we don't necessarily understand yet in terms of that impact might be. My understanding is the legislation is meant to impact those folks who have who family members or care providers or service clubs have repeatedly tried to assist. And so these are folks that we are likely repeat calls for service, maybe repeat overdoses, that really, despite best efforts, voluntary treatment has not worked or hasn't been able to be accessed. And so I think there might be a small number of individuals who this legislation might be applicable to. We're not sure yet what a facility looks like. I think that there's still a lot of details still to be worked out. But I think there will be an impact at some point. We don't know yet what that number will be. The big difference is obviously folks that are transported to the complex needs facility can be held there up to 24 hours until the effects of drugs or alcohol is worn off and they're not a danger to themselves or others. With the compassionate intervention legislation, that time period is extended. And so I know that there will be sort of additional levels of oversight in terms of determining whether those 30-day orders, there'll be a tribunal, that type of thing. And so we are just kind of waiting to see what happens. Certainly through the Saskatchewan Associations of Chiefs of Police, we have asked for input in terms of the regulations. We have questions about, does it have to be police officers that can arrest and transport? Could it be, for instance, a peace officer at a hospital, or could a doctor order it? And so there are a number of things that we're still waiting to see. And so I guess stay tuned. We understand it's still a number of months away before that legislation is applicably in place.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to know if discussions were happening at your level with SHA and other involved agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to receive and file that report? Commissioner Bailey, call the question. Any opposed? And carried. Can I have a resolution for private session, please? Councillor Siklees, call the question. Any opposed? And carried. Thank you, everybody. We'll recess.